Fine? Okay, good. No, I'm fine, thank you. Pull up here your paper, your reflection. How's your paper coming along?
I don't know. I think I'm going backwards, teacher.
Backwards?
Yeah.
Uh-oh. What's
Because I
what's
thought
going on?
I already had it, but now I am not sure about my topic.
Okay, let's take a
Because
look
I don't
here.
know if it's relevant or not. Um,
Okay. All right, Pilar, let's look at,
yeah, can you check that
so,
please? Because I'm not sure if it's
all right, I
correct.
see that you've added information here to the page. Is this updated? Is this what you're thinking that you want to do each one of these steps?
Yeah, but I would
Or,
like you to check that information because I'm
sure.
not sure if it's correct or not.
Okay, so you say here, I wish to learn more about the use of authentic video materials because I want to find out how teachers can implement this kind of material, how they can implement this type of material in order to help students develop their listening comprehension skills in a more effective way. All right. I would leave out the term in a more, or the phrase in a more effective way.
Okay.
Just because that sounds like.
Yeah, like you told me before that it's measuring learning.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Now, authentic video material. So, and you're focusing on listening comprehension. So, what primary research articles have you found? Let's see. I wish to examine students' learning strategies.
Well, in this one, I'm not. I think it's teaching techniques rather than learning strategies.
Okay. So you're looking at teacher strategies in using video material,
Yeah.
or you wish to examine. Let's see.
No estoy segura de eso.
All right. What primary research articles have you found that you feel relate or that are similar to the type of research that you'd like to do for the semester?
I have one here not, but
Have you found primary research articles that link video and listening comprehension?
yes, I found some of them. this one is not like a research. I think this one is like. mm, This is an article from a journal. And this one talks about the teacher's role and some techniques that we can use when using these kind of materials
For listening comprehension.
for listening comprehension.
Now, what are some of the techniques? Do you remember that they talk about in the article?
Yes, it's es que claro tengo este también me pareció. Mire, aquí tengo algunas: visión silenciosa, sonidos sin visión, prevención.
But do you have in English here?
Yes, well, I have this one is in English. It's not from the same authors, but they have some of the same.
Okay.
Yeah, the same techniques. Sound on and vision of activity, repetition and role play, reproduction of yeah, activity, follow up activity.
Okay, so maybe you can, one option. What we have to make sure is that the 4 steps align, right? So, if you want to talk about these types of strategies with the use of video, then you might want to say, I wish to learn more about the use of authentic video materials because I want to find out how techniques, how teachers use or implement techniques to promote listening comprehension in order, and then you can finish the third part. So you might want to mention the second part of step 1, which also is is related to your research question. So in your research questions, you need to mention something about video, the use of video, and it may or may not even be necessary to call it authentic. You might discuss authentic material in your theory, in your literature review, but if you just mention video, the use of video, and techniques, or the techniques using video, you want to use those key words in your research questions. Thinking about the question word, which question words you want to use: how, when, where, why. If you want to get the perspective of the teacher, why are you using these techniques, right? Where you can kind of get the perspective of the teacher if you want. You might, think about getting the perspective of the student, how they feel about doing these types of activities. Okay, but I think just try to align more specifically the second part of step 1. Okay, so where it says, because I want to find out how teachers implement techniques, and then step 2, I wish to examine either teaching techniques, or however you want to categorize these, if these are techniques or strategies, whatever they are, articulate that in step 2. I wish to examine teaching techniques, because these don't sound too much like learning strategies to me. These are more like teaching. And here you say, I wish to examine students' learning strategies and the effects authentic material. So you wish to examine, just list out what you, so I wish to examine teaching techniques, teacher perspectives, and student attitudes towards these strategies. Something to that effect. If you look at the handout, I list out some general examples of different things to examine. So in this case, I would remove the effects of you want to students' attitudes or teachers' perspectives and teacher conduct or technique. Then the unit of analysis. Okay, so now the unit of analysis This is something that I want you to think about now, but that could change later on. So, the unit of analysis, think of this as the level in which you're going to analyze. So, for example, one option is you want to look at 3 different teachers and look at how they implement different techniques, and then that would be at the level of teacher because you have 3 teachers. So teacher 1, teacher 2, teacher 3, that's the level, that's the unit of analysis. Or let's say you want to do a case study on one teacher and you want to look at different techniques of that one teacher, then the unit of analysis would be technique. So think of it like the level. If you want to do it at a school level, you have 2 teachers from this school, 2 teachers from this school, and you compare the schools. So the level of unit of analysis would be at the school level. That's kind of what that means. So try to think now, more or less, practically speaking, what your unit of analysis is. And then when you get a little bit closer and we start talking more about the actual participants, we can always go back and change that if it's necessary. But I think it's a good exercise now to think about the unit of analysis and step 4, which is the type of study. So if you're going to do a case study, if that case study is going to be a case study on one teacher only, if the case study is going to be on a variety of teachers or schools or whatever, or a certain type of teacher, if you're looking at the unit of, if you're looking at different teacher for a general English course versus an EAP, English for academic purposes teacher, whatever. All right, does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, all right. So I think we need to think more in terms of teaching technique, and you can reflect that here in this page. Okay, so you can go ahead and update that. And I think you'll find tons of information
Yes, I have
on this.
I
So,
haven't finished reading all of them,
but do your best to find articles that are in English that are primary research articles, so that you can. They're going to have, I bet you can find even examples of research questions that are really similar, right? Or that at least when you read it, you say, okay, I'm going to adapt it. I get an idea of a type of research question, or maybe it's an instrument that they used, or maybe it's the way that they collected data that you say, okay, I can do the same thing. Okay. Also, another thing you're going to have to think about, which you need to kind of think about now, but we'll have to definitely determine later, is whether or not you want to do an intervention.
Yes, that's what
Or if you want to try to find somebody who's already using these techniques. Now, when you go about looking at these teaching techniques, my recommendation would be, because there's going to be a lot of information, try your best to focus on techniques that you think that are current or that are being used already.
Okay.
Based on your experience as a teacher and a learner here in Mexico, think about those teachers who hopefully are already doing some of these techniques. Okay, that way, if you can do that, then you might be able to find teachers where you don't have to do an intervention. You can just find them and observe something that they're already doing. Now, you may have to work out the logistics and say, okay, when do you plan on doing this using video for listening comprehension? Because they probably don't do it every day. But if they do it frequently enough, you can talk to them beforehand and say, okay, I'm thinking about in a couple of weeks or whatever to observe. Can you kind of give me an idea of what days that you will be implementing this? That's one option. If you think that that's too difficult to arrange, then the other option is to do an intervention, which is another option. My personal suggestion would be that you try to find a teacher that's already doing it naturally, so you don't have to really pose much. You just observe something that, quote unquote, they're doing it naturally, right? Even though you are observing them. Otherwise, you run the risk of trying to work with the teacher, trying to implement something that you have an idea about, knowing that you have this, you need this for your research, and they may or may not deliver. They may or may not do it, and maybe they don't give you the information you need, and so I mean, it's certainly a possibility, and we can do an intervention, but it just has its own set of considerations that you need to try to think of, to be aware of, so you can try to avoid having any situations where you observe and you're not getting the information that you need. So just think about that, and think about that at the time that you're getting this information and you're organizing your literature review, that you talk about different types of strategies that you think are fairly common. Okay, what else? Do you have any other questions that we need to, or concerns that we need to discuss?
Yeah, well, es que estaba pensando, pero es que ahí sería otro enfoque, creo yo, ahí sería más bien como hacia las learning strategies. Si yo, por ejemplo, bueno, es que no sé si se pueda, que yo aplique las técnicas y ver los alumnos, ¿no? Pero es que
Mira,
no
en
me
este
queda
caso,
muy claro, pues, entonces,
right, in this thesis seminar, because 7th semester everyone did a applied research or action research, where they all did a research on their own practice. We would like this semester be where you observe someone else.
Okay.
Now, you could still do an intervention in the sense that I have this idea that, but the idea is that someone else does it. And someone else does it to another class that's not your class. If you're teaching this semester, that you're not using your own students as participants of the study. So try to think of in terms of observing someone else, another teacher, another group. And so so what do you think? Is this something that is this a little bit clearer for you? Is this something that you want to research, or are you still thinking of some other topics or ideas that you would rather do? Or
no, I think this one.
This one? Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Because I already have like more or less the idea, but I was like in the, no sé, estaba como en las nubes, necesitaba como que me ayudara a aterrizarlo.
Okay. But is it clear now, like the direction you want to take? Okay.
Sí, gracias.
No, de nada.
Sí, pues ya.
Okay, so I think now we need to start, you need to start uploading your information here. What I would recommend is go ahead and add your research questions right away. And you might even add your thesis statement just so you have kind of a clear idea. But wait on the introduction. You don't need to do the introduction until at the end. Go ahead and start completing this, and this section, the literature review, and the research questions that you that you include at the end of your literature review are going to be directly taken from step 1, but specifically where it says, because I want to find out, and then whatever you put here up until where it says, right before it says, in order to. So what I've highlighted here, whatever you put there, your research questions, anywhere from 2 to 4, I wouldn't have any more than 4 research questions. Those research questions should be taken directly from whatever you put here in this.
Part of step 1, right?
That's correct. Right. So make sure that those align. And obviously, as we mentioned before, that you align step 2, all these steps, step 1 through 4, that you're aligning those, talking about the same thing. And then that way, when I look at your work and as you develop it over the next few weeks, I'll be looking at your research questions, kind of seeing how you develop your argument. Now I've included a link here, and I'll go ahead and show you here where this is in modules. And for week 2, I have this link that's called Developing an Argument.
Oh, yes.
And there's a lot of information here, but I really would like for you to take a look at this before you start designing your literature review, so that you have an idea. And for me, the easiest thing to do is fill out the headings and include the main topics of your heading, so you kind of have an idea about the outline, the order in which you want to present your information. But in this first video, I include 3 examples of types of logical orders that you can consider. There are many others, but it needs to follow some order. And whenever we form an argument, and basically your literature review is an argument, you have to present the the claims that support your thesis, but you also have to present the counter argument, the other perspective. So
Okay.
whatever strategy you have or that you propose, there's going to be some weakness or some alternative perspective that you should also discuss, right? So it's not all good. It's not like this is the perfect technique and there's no, so these authors are going to have different perspectives about these things. So do your best to try to place or present both sides of the perspective, the argument, whenever you organize your work. So take a look at this. There's a lot of information, but I think it's all useful and things to think about whenever you're developing it. And this is what I'll be looking for whenever, and what we'll be discussing from here on out until February 28th, which is when our due date has been set up for our literature review. But this is what I'll be looking for: how you're organizing your data. And if you just include your headings here first, and then go in and start inserting this information, and you can always go back and change it. But I will kind of see how you're organizing this,
Okay.
and I can intervene if needed, or if you have doubts as you develop. Okay. The other option is that you develop the whole thing for the next 3 weeks, and then I give you feedback. But I would rather you and I work together each week. You develop as much as you can each week, and we talk about how it's being organized. Because I might be able to say after the first week, okay, maybe change this, or maybe present it this way, and it might help the rest of the process.
If everything at the end, then I won't have enough time to change or to make the
Right.
corresponding change.
So think about the thesis statement as the one sentence that answers your research questions, right? So I think we've talked about this before, but that's why I think it's helpful just to put the thesis statement here and the research questions, because you can, as you are developing, go back and say, okay, am I addressing the research questions? Because the research questions obviously are what ties the theory to your actual research. So the main thing is that we are developing our literature review that addresses topics that you will be looking at and researching and talking about in your final research. Okay. We don't want to talk about anything in the literature review that's like has really nothing to do with your research. Okay. So that's kind of the idea. It looks like the format, you've got the template all set up, so just you can keep that just the way it is. And what else? Well, I think that's basically it. We'll just remember that reflections are due by Sunday, and yeah, I think that should do it. So try to do as much as try to get as many articles as you can. Find books. eBrary is a good research or database that you have access to full books that I'm sure will be useful for you as well to look into this topic.
Well, I'm having trouble to get into the virtual library because I don't remember my password. So where can I? You can help me to.
I don't remember the name of the building, but it's right in front of 1B.
Okay.
Going just straight into the library. You know the library is. When you go in from this side, there's stairways that go up, and on the left-hand side there's a computer lab.
Okay.
And that person who's in charge of that computer lab is also in charge of the whole virtual library. So you can go over there and ask him about trying to get your password. Or I think the password is like it's your student ID and your birth date, no?
Yeah, well, I tried that, but it didn't work. Oh, I don't know.
Okay.
Maybe it was because I was at home, but.
But it should work also from at home. But try it again. Try it here again, and ask him, how do I access, from home, and just see if there's not anything special that you have to do differently from outside the university. But as far as I know, you should be able to access it both within the university and outside of campus. So check that. If you continue to have problems, see me right away, and I'll look. I'll try to see if I can help you with that. But the person over there is very accessible and helpful, and so I think that would be the place to start. So, all right. So yeah, well, let's continue on with this, and try to have something for next week.
Yes.
Upload it in your literature review so we can kind of look at the order.
Okay.
All right.
Well,
Muy bien.
thank you very
You're
much.
welcome. Here, this is yours.
So I'll see you next Tuesday at 11.
At 11 o'clock. Muy bien. Alrighty. Take care. Have a good week.
Yes, thank you. So you.
Thank you.
Okay.